The wagon wheel hit a rut in the dirt road, and Olivia Newman's entire body seized with pain so sharp she had to bite down on her lip to keep from crying out in front of the other passengers traveling toward Chloride, Arizona, in the summer of 1883. She pressed one hand against her ribs, feeling the tender flesh beneath her worn calico dress, and tried to breathe shallowly. 3 days had passed since Marcus had lost his temper over the burnt biscuits. 3 days since his fists had found her midsection with such fury that she thought something inside might have broken. The bruises had bloomed purple and black along her ribcage, spreading like spilled ink across her pale skin. She had packed her few belongings that same night while he slept off his whiskey, taking only what she could carry and the small amount of money she had hidden in a flour tin over the past 2 years. The elderly woman sitting across from her in the cramped stagecoach gave her a curious look. Olivia forced a smile and turned to gaze out the window at the desert landscape rolling past. Saguaro cacti stood like sentinels against the brilliant blue sky, and the heat shimmered off the rust-colored earth. She had never been to Arizona Territory before, had never been anywhere except the small Kansas town where she had grown up, and then married Marcus Newman at 18. Thinking he was her escape from a difficult childhood, only to find herself trapped in something far worse. Now, at 23, she was finally running. Her aunt's letter had arrived like a miracle 4 months ago, inviting her to come help run the boarding house in Chloride. Olivia had written back immediately, careful to collect the return correspondence from the post office herself, so Marcus would never know. Her Aunt Beatrice had sent money for passage, and Olivia had waited for the right moment, gathering her courage day by day until Marcus's latest attack had made the decision simple. Stay and possibly die, or run and possibly live. The stagecoach rolled into Chloride just as the sun began its descent toward the jagged peaks of the Surbat Mountains. The town was smaller than Olivia had imagined, a collection of weathered wooden buildings clustered along a main street, with mines visible in the hills beyond. The driver helped her down, and she winced as her feet hit the ground, the jarring motion sending fresh pain through her torso. "You all right, miss?" the driver asked, his weathered face creased with concern. "Just tired from the journey," Olivia said quickly, clutching her carpetbag close. "Could you direct me to the Copper Bell boarding house?" He pointed down the street. "3 buildings down on the left. Miss Beatrice runs a good establishment." Olivia thanked him and started walking, each step a small agony she refused to acknowledge. The town was busy with the end-of-day activity. Miners finishing their shifts, merchants closing their shops, and women hurrying to complete their errands before supper. She kept her head down, not wanting to draw attention, not wanting anyone to look too closely at the shadows under her eyes or the way she held herself so carefully. The boarding house was a 2-story structure with a painted sign and lace curtains in the windows. Olivia climbed the porch steps and knocked, relief flooding through her when the door opened to reveal her aunt's familiar face, older than she remembered but with the same kind eyes. "Olivia, child." Beatrice pulled her into an embrace that made Olivia gasp involuntarily. Her aunt stepped back immediately, her expression shifting from joy to concern. "What is it? Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Olivia said, but tears were suddenly streaming down her face, all the fear and pain and exhaustion of the past weeks overwhelming her in the safety of her aunt's presence. "I'm fine, I just need to rest." Beatrice asked no more questions, simply pulled her inside, took her bag, and led her up the stairs to a small room at the back of the 2nd floor. "This will be yours. Let me bring you some water and something to eat. We can talk later when you are ready." Left alone, Olivia sank onto the narrow bed and let herself cry properly for the first time since leaving Kansas. She cried for the girl she had been who thought marriage would save her, for the woman she had become who had endured so much, and for the uncertain future that stretched before her. When the tears finally stopped, she carefully removed her dress and examined the damage in the small mirror on the wall. The bruises were even worse than she had thought, ugly marks that told the story of Marcus's rage. She touched them gently, remembering the doctor in Kansas who had warned her 6 months ago that another beating could crack her ribs or worse. That warning had planted the seed of escape in her mind, and it had slowly grown until it consumed her with the need to get away. Over the next week, Olivia settled into life at the boarding house. Her aunt asked no probing questions, though Olivia caught her looking at the careful way she moved, the way she never raised her arms too high or twisted her body too quickly. The boarding house currently had 5 residents, all minors, and Olivia helped with the cooking, cleaning, and laundry. The work was hard but honest, and she felt safer than she had in years within these walls. The bruises began to fade from purple to greenish yellow, and the pain lessened each day. Olivia started to breathe easier, to sleep through the night without jerking awake at every sound. She began to believe that she might actually be free, that Marcus would not somehow appear to drag her back to Kansas. Her aunt had assured her that even if he came looking, the people of Chloride would protect their own, and Olivia was family. On her 8th day in town, Olivia was hanging laundry in the yard behind the boarding house when she heard horses approaching. She paid little attention until her aunt called out a greeting, and a man's deep voice responded. Olivia continued pinning sheets to the line, grateful for the privacy the flapping fabric provided. "Olivia, come meet one of our regulars," Beatrice called. She wiped her hands on her apron and stepped around the laundry line to find her aunt standing with a man who made Olivia's breath catch in her throat. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a lean build that spoke of hard work and harder living. His face was tanned and angular, with dark eyes that seemed to see too much, and a strong jaw currently shadowed with stubble. He wore dusty riding clothes and a cattleman's hat, and a gun belt hung low on his hips. He looked dangerous and capable, exactly the kind of man Olivia had learned to fear. She took an involuntary step backward. "This is Zachary Harper," Beatrice said, seeming not to notice Olivia's reaction. "He brings us supplies from his ranch once a week. Zachary, this is my niece, Olivia Newman. She has come to help me run the boarding house." Zachary removed his hat and nodded respectfully. "Madam, pleased to meet you." His voice was surprisingly gentle for such a large man, and his eyes were kind when they met hers. Olivia forced herself to return the greeting, keeping her arms wrapped around her midsection, a protective gesture she could not seem to break. "I have got the flour and sugar you ordered," Zachary said to Beatrice, "and some fresh vegetables from the garden. I will bring them in." He replaced his hat and headed back toward the wagon, moving with an easy grace that spoke of confidence without arrogance. Olivia watched him go, confused by her own reaction. Fear, yes, that was to be expected, but also a strange flutter in her stomach that she had not felt in years, not since before her marriage turned dark. "Zachary is a good man," Beatrice said quietly, watching her niece's face. "One of the best I know. He owns a ranch about 5 miles outside of town, runs cattle and horses. Lost his parents to fever when he was young, built that place up from nothing. He is honest and hardworking, and he has never raised his hand to anyone who did not deserve it." Olivia heard the message beneath her aunt's words. She nodded slowly, then went to help carry the supplies inside. Over the following weeks, Zachary's weekly visits became something Olivia both anticipated and dreaded. He was unfailingly polite, always respectful, and never pressed her for conversation when she was clearly uncomfortable. But he watched her, not with the possessive anger she had known from Marcus, but with a gentle curiosity that unnerved her in a different way. Sometimes she would look up from her work to find his dark eyes on her, and the intensity of his gaze made heat rise to her cheeks. She learned things about him through her aunt and the other townspeople. He was 26 years old, had never been married, and was considered one of the most eligible bachelors in the territory. He was known for his fair dealings and his quick draw, though he rarely had cause to use the latter. Several women in town had set their caps for him over the years, but he had remained resolutely single, focused on building his ranch into something prosperous. One evening, nearly a month after Olivia's arrival, she was in the kitchen preparing dinner when she heard raised voices from the common room. She recognized Beatrice's voice and another man's, someone she did not know. The stranger's tone was aggressive, demanding, and Olivia felt her stomach clench with old fear. "I am telling you, woman, I paid for 2 weeks in advance and I have only been here one. You owe me money back. And I am telling you that you broke the rules of this establishment by bringing whiskey into your room and starting a fight with another boarder. You are lucky I am not charging you for the broken furniture. You old witch, you will give me my money or—" Olivia could not stop herself. She hurried to the doorway and saw a large man looming over her aunt, his fist raised. Without thinking, she grabbed the cast iron skillet from the stove and stepped forward. "Leave her alone." Both Beatrice and the man turned to look at her. The stranger's eyes narrowed, taking in her small frame and the heavy pan she held like a weapon. He started toward her instead, and Olivia's courage faltered. She backed up, trying to keep the kitchen table between them, but he was faster. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist, twisting until she dropped the skillet with a clatter. "You need to learn some manners, little girl," he snarled, and his other hand reached for her. Then suddenly, he was not there anymore. Zachary Harper had appeared from somewhere and hauled the man away from Olivia with such force that the stranger stumbled backward into the wall. Zachary's face was set in hard lines, his jaw clenched tight with fury. "You have 2 seconds to get out of this house before I throw you out," Zachary said, his voice deadly quiet. "And if you ever lay a hand on either of these women again, I will make sure it is the last thing you do." The stranger took one look at Zachary's expression, and the gun on his hip and apparently decided discretion was the better part of valor. He grabbed his hat from the floor and fled, slamming the door behind him. Zachary turned immediately to Olivia. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, but she was trembling violently, her wrist red where the man had grabbed her. Zachary's eyes dropped to the mark and his jaw tightened further. "I am fine," Olivia managed to say. "Thank you for helping. Let me see your wrist." She extended her arm reluctantly, and Zachary took her hand gently in his larger ones, examining the already forming bruise with a feather-light touch that contrasted sharply with his obvious anger. His hands were calloused and warm, and Olivia found herself unable to look away from his face as he carefully turned her wrist, checking for serious damage. "It will bruise, but nothing is broken," he said finally, and looked up at her. His eyes were so dark they were almost black, and in them she saw something that made her heart beat faster. "You are safe now." The words, spoken with such conviction, broke something inside her. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them, and she pulled her hand back, wrapping her arms around herself in that protective gesture that had become habit. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am sorry. I should not. Don't apologize for feeling," Zachary said quietly. His eyes moved over her face, reading things there she wished she could hide. Then his gaze dropped lower, to where she held her arms tight against her ribs, and something changed in his expression. "Olivia," Beatrice said gently, coming to stand beside her, "why do you not go upstairs and rest?" "I will finish dinner." Olivia nodded and fled, grateful for the escape. She heard Zachary and her aunt speaking in low tones as she climbed the stairs, but could not make out the words. In her room, she sat on the edge of the bed and tried to calm her racing heart. The brief confrontation had brought back so many terrible memories, and yet Zachary's intervention had been so different from anything she had known. He had protected her without making her feel weak, had defended her without claiming ownership. It confused her, this kindness from a man. The next morning, Olivia came down to find Zachary still there, sleeping in a chair in the common room. He had stayed the night, she realized, making sure the angry stranger did not return. When he heard her on the stairs, he woke immediately, his hand going to his gun before he recognized her and relaxed. "Good morning," he said, standing and stretching. "Everything was quiet through the night." "You did not have to stay," Olivia said softly. "I wanted to make sure you were safe." He picked up his hat from the side table and turned to face her fully. "Miss Newman, I know it is not my place to ask, but that man yesterday, he barely touched you and you had bruises on your wrist. You hold yourself like someone who is hurt, and you flinch when anyone moves too quickly. I am not a fool, and I have seen this before in other places. Someone hurt you badly." Olivia felt her face flush hot and then cold. "I do not want to talk about it." "I am not asking you to," Zachary said, his voice still gentle. "I am just telling you that you are safe here, and if whoever hurt you comes looking, he will have to go through me and every other decent man in this town. Beatrice has already spread the word. You are under protection." The simple declaration made Olivia's throat tight with emotion. "Why would you do that? You do not even know me." Zachary was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, his voice was rougher. "Because no woman should ever have to be afraid the way you are, and because Beatrice loves you, which makes you family to this town." He paused, then added with a slight smile that transformed his stern face, "And because I would like the chance to get to know you if you will let me." Before Olivia could respond, Beatrice bustled in from the kitchen with breakfast, and the moment passed. But Olivia thought about Zachary's words all day as she went about her work, and found herself watching the road, hoping to catch a glimpse of him returning to his ranch. The weeks turned into months, and summer faded into autumn. The brutal heat of the desert gave way to cooler temperatures, and Olivia found herself healing in ways that went beyond the physical. The bruises on her ribs had long since disappeared, and she could breathe deeply again without pain. But more than that, she was beginning to remember who she had been before Marcus, before fear became her constant companion. Zachary continued his weekly visits, but now he often found reasons to stay longer. He would repair things around the boarding house, fix a loose step or a sticking door. He brought vegetables from his garden and sometimes game he had hunted. And he talked to Olivia, patient and kind, never pushing but always present. He told her about his ranch, about the horses he was breeding and the cattle he was raising. He spoke of his dreams to expand, to create something lasting. And slowly, carefully, Olivia began to talk back. She told him about Kansas, about the flat prairies so different from the Arizona mountains. She spoke of her childhood, of her love for reading, of her mother who had died when she was young. She did not speak of Marcus, but she thought Zachary understood what she left unsaid. He never pressed, never demanded more than she was willing to give. One October afternoon, Olivia was in the yard taking down dried laundry when Zachary rode up. He dismounted and tied his horse to the rail, then stood there watching her work with an expression she could not read. "You look better," he said finally. "Healthier. You have got some color in your cheeks." Olivia felt herself blush under his scrutiny. "The Arizona sun is hard to avoid. It is not just that." He walked closer, and Olivia found herself looking up at him, struck by how tall he was, how solid, but she did not feel afraid. Somewhere over the past months, her fear of him had transformed into something else entirely. "You smile now sometimes. You do not hold yourself like you are made of glass anymore." "I am healing," Olivia said quietly. "Thanks in part to you." Zachary's expression softened. "I did not do anything. You made me feel safe. You all did." She set down the basket of linens and met his eyes. "I know you have figured out some of what happened to me back in Kansas. My husband, he was not a kind man. For 5 years I lived in fear, and I thought that was just how marriage was, how life was. Coming here, meeting people like you and Aunt Beatrice, I am learning that I was wrong, that there is kindness in the world." "Your husband," Zachary repeated, and his jaw set hard. "You are still married, legally, yes. But I am never going back to him. I would rather die." The vehemence in her voice seemed to affect Zachary deeply. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and when she did not, he gently took her hand in his. "Then we will make sure you never have to. There are ways to end a marriage, especially when there has been cruelty. My friend is a lawyer in Prescott. If you want, I can talk to him." Olivia stared at their joined hands, at the way his thumb brushed softly over her knuckles. "I do not have money for a lawyer. You let me worry about that." Zachary squeezed her hand gently. "Olivia, I need to be honest with you about something. I did not just stay away from marriage all these years because I was focused on my ranch. I stayed single because I never met a woman who made me want to change my life. Until you walked around that laundry line 3 months ago and looked at me like I might hurt you, which just about broke my heart. I have been falling for you since that first day, and I am done pretending otherwise." Olivia's breath caught. "Zachary, I am not asking you for anything," he said quickly. "I know you need time. I know you have been hurt in ways I cannot fully understand, but I wanted you to know how I feel, and that whenever you are ready, if you ever are ready, I will be here. I will wait as long as it takes." The tears that filled Olivia's eyes now were not from pain or fear, but from a hope so fragile she was afraid to name it. "I do not know how to do this," she whispered. "I do not know how to trust again, how to believe that someone could care for me without wanting to hurt me." "Then we will figure it out together," Zachary said. "Slow as you need to go. No pressure, no expectations. Just let me be near you, let me show you what it is supposed to be like." Olivia nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Zachary smiled, that rare expression that transformed his whole face, and gently released her hand. "Good. Now, your aunt mentioned the porch railing is loose. Let me fix that before I head back to the ranch." He walked away to get his tools, and Olivia pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heart racing beneath her palm. She was terrified and exhilarated in equal measure, standing on the edge of something that could be wonderful or could destroy her. But for the first time in years, she wanted to be brave enough to find out. The lawyer in Prescott turned out to be a sympathetic man who listened to Olivia's story without judgment, and assured her that a divorce could be obtained based on Marcus's cruelty and her desertion. It would take time, he warned, possibly a year or more, but it was possible. Zachary paid the fees despite Olivia's protests, telling her firmly that he considered it an investment in her future happiness. As autumn deepened and winter approached, Olivia found herself spending more time with Zachary. He invited her to visit his ranch one Sunday, and she went with Beatrice as chaperone. The ranch was beautiful, sprawling across a valley with the mountains rising behind it. The house was modest but well built, and the land was rich with cattle and horses. Zachary showed her everything with obvious pride, and Olivia could see how much work he had put into building this place. "It is lovely," she told him honestly, watching a mare and her foal grazing in a nearby pasture. "You should be proud of what you have created." "I built it thinking it would be enough," Zachary said, standing close beside her at the fence rail. "But lately, I have been realizing that a ranch is just land and animals without someone to share it with. It feels empty going back to that house alone every night." Olivia looked up at him and saw the longing in his face. "Zachary, I care about you. More than I thought I could care about anyone again, but I am still so afraid. When you stand too close, sometimes I have to fight the urge to run. When you raise your arm, even just to put on your hat, part of me expects a blow. I hate that I feel this way, but I cannot seem to stop it." "Then we will work on it," Zachary said simply. "We will go slow. I will never raise my voice at you, never lift my hand to you except in gentleness. However long it takes for you to believe that, I will wait." And he did wait, with a patience that astonished Olivia. Through the winter months, he courted her with a care and respect she had not known was possible. He brought her small gifts, a book she had mentioned wanting to read, a shawl in soft blue wool to keep her warm. He took her on walks through the town and out into the desert, always with Beatrice nearby to preserve propriety. He talked to her about everything and nothing, learning her thoughts and opinions, treating them as valuable. And gradually, so slowly Olivia barely noticed it happening, she began to trust him. She stopped flinching when he moved suddenly. She started to stand closer to him, to let their shoulders brush as they walked. Once, in early December, she reached for his hand first, and the look of joy on his face made her heart soar. The letter from Marcus arrived just before Christmas. Olivia was sorting mail for the boarding house residents when she saw the envelope addressed to her in Marcus's distinctive scrawl. Her hands started shaking so badly she dropped the rest of the letters. Beatrice found her standing frozen in the entryway, staring at the unopened envelope like it was a snake. "Oh, honey," Beatrice said, and gently took it from her. "Do you want me to read it first?" Olivia nodded, unable to speak. She watched her aunt open the envelope and scan the contents, saw the way Beatrice's mouth tightened into a grim line. "He knows where you are," Beatrice said finally. "Someone from Kansas must have mentioned it. He says you are still his wife and he is coming to bring you home. He will be here after the first of the year." The words hit Olivia like a physical blow. All the progress she had made, all the healing, suddenly felt fragile as spun glass. "He will kill me," she whispered. "If he gets me back to Kansas, he will kill me for leaving." "He is not going to get you," Beatrice said fiercely. "We will not let that happen. Come on, we are going to find Zachary." They found him at the general store picking up supplies. One look at Olivia's face and he dropped everything, coming to her side immediately. "What happened?" Beatrice handed him the letter. Zachary read it, and with each line his expression grew darker. When he finished, he carefully folded the paper and looked at Olivia with eyes gone hard as flint. "He is not taking you anywhere," Zachary said, his voice absolutely certain. "I promise you that." "You do not understand," Olivia said desperately. "Marcus is dangerous. He will not care about laws or property or anything else. He thinks he owns me. Then he needs to learn different." Zachary placed his hands on her shoulders, his touch gentle despite the fury she could see in him. "Olivia, look at me. I will not let him hurt you again. Whatever I have to do, however far I have to go, I will keep you safe. Do you believe me?" Olivia searched his face and saw nothing but absolute determination. Slowly, she nodded. "I believe you. Good." He turned to Beatrice. "We need to talk to the sheriff, and I am going to send word to some friends. If this husband of hers wants a fight, he will get one. The next week was tense with preparation. The sheriff, a grizzled older man named Tom Wilkins, listened to Olivia's story and declared that he would not allow any man to take a woman from Chloride against her will, husband or not. Several of the miners who boarded with Beatrice volunteered to help if there was trouble. And Zachary seemed to be everywhere, organizing, planning, making sure Olivia was never alone. He also spent more time with her, sitting with her in the evenings, talking to take her mind off the waiting. One night, as they sat in the parlor while Beatrice knitted nearby, Zachary told Olivia about his childhood. "My parents were good people," he said, staring into the fire. "My father taught me that a man's worth is measured by how he treats those weaker than him. He said anyone can be tough with someone smaller, but it takes real strength to be gentle. When they died and I was left alone at 17, those lessons were all I had to guide me. I built the ranch on that foundation, treating my hands fair, dealing honest with everyone. And I swore I would never become the kind of man who used his strength to hurt others." "Your father would be proud of you," Olivia said softly. Zachary looked at her. "I hope so. And I hope he would approve of the woman I have fallen in love with." It was the first time he had said the words so plainly without qualification. Olivia's breath caught. "Zachary, you do not have to say anything back," he said quickly. "I just wanted you to know. Whatever happens with your husband, whatever comes, I love you. That is not going to change." Olivia felt tears sting her eyes. "I think I love you too. I am just so afraid of what that means, of trusting it. Fear is reasonable after what you have been through." Zachary reached out and took her hand. But loving someone should not feel like a trap. It should feel like freedom. "I want you to be free, Olivia. Free to make your own choices, to live your own life. If you choose to spend that life with me, I will be the happiest man alive. But even if you do not, I still want you to be free." The simple beauty of that statement broke through Olivia's defenses. She squeezed his hand tightly. "Thank you for waiting for me. Thank you for being patient." "I would wait forever," Zachary said simply. Marcus Newman arrived in Chloride on a cold January morning when frost still clung to the saguaro cacti. Olivia was in the kitchen when she heard the commotion outside, heard Beatrice's sharp voice and a man's angry shouts. She froze, every instinct screaming at her to run, to hide, but she forced herself to stay still. Running had not worked before. This time she would face him. She walked to the front door and stepped out onto the porch. Marcus stood in the street, looking older and meaner than she remembered. His face was red with anger, and when he saw her, his eyes lit with a possessive fury that made her stomach turn. "There you are," he snarled. "Get your things." "We are leaving." "No," Olivia said, and her voice only shook a little. "I am not going anywhere with you. You are my wife." Marcus started toward the porch, but before he could take 2 steps, Zachary appeared from the side of the building, moving to stand between Marcus and the steps. "The lady said no," Zachary said, his voice calm but carrying clearly in the cold air. "I suggest you listen." Marcus looked Zachary up and down, taking in his size and the gun on his hip. "This does not concern you. This is between me and my wife." "Everything concerning Olivia concerns me," Zachary replied. "And you are not welcome here. Mount up and ride out while you still can." "Who the hell are you?" Marcus demanded. "I am the man who is going to marry her once the divorce comes through," Zachary said flatly. "I am also the man who will put you in the ground if you try to take her. Your choice which you want to deal with." Marcus's face went apoplectic. "Divorce. You lying bitch." He tried to lunge around Zachary toward Olivia, but Zachary moved faster, his fist connecting with Marcus's jaw with an audible crack. Marcus went down hard, blood streaming from his mouth. "Stay down," Zachary warned, his hand hovering near his gun. "I am not going to tell you again." But Marcus was beyond reason. He scrambled to his feet and went for his own gun, and suddenly everything happened very fast. Zachary's weapon was out in a blur of motion, the shot echoing off the buildings. Marcus's gun fell from his hand as he clutched his shoulder, screaming in pain and rage. Sheriff Wilkins appeared from down the street, his own gun drawn. "That is enough. Marcus Newman, you are under arrest for attempted assault and drawing a weapon in town limits." "She is my wife," Marcus screamed as the sheriff hauled him to his feet. "She belongs to me." "She is a human being," Zachary said coldly. "And she does not belong to anyone. Get him out of here, Tom." As the sheriff dragged Marcus away, still shouting threats and curses, Olivia's knees gave out. She sat down hard on the porch steps, her whole body shaking with reaction. Zachary was beside her in an instant, holstering his gun and gathering her into his arms. "It is over," he murmured against her hair. "He cannot hurt you anymore. I promise, it is over." Olivia buried her face in his shoulder and let herself shake, let herself feel the fear and relief and gratitude all at once. Zachary held her tightly, one hand stroking her back, murmuring reassurance until the trembling stopped. When she finally pulled back to look at him, she saw that his own hands were shaking slightly. "I was so afraid," he admitted. "When he went for his gun, all I could think was that I might lose you before I ever really had you." "You have me," Olivia said, and realized it was true. "Zachary, you have me. I am yours if you still want me. If I still want you." Zachary's laugh was shaky. "Olivia, I have wanted you since the first moment I saw you. I will want you until the day I die." He kissed her then, soft and careful, and Olivia kissed him back, tasting salt from her own tears. It was her first kiss that was not stolen or forced but freely given, and it felt like a promise of everything to come. Marcus was tried and sentenced to 6 months in the territorial prison for assault and disturbing the peace. More importantly, his violent behavior gave Olivia's lawyer additional ammunition for the divorce proceedings. By spring, word came that the divorce had been granted. Olivia was finally, legally free. Zachary proposed that same evening, kneeling in Beatrice's parlor with a simple gold ring he had carried in his pocket for months, waiting for this moment. Olivia said yes through happy tears, and they were married in June in a ceremony at the small church in Chloride. Half the town attended, celebrating the union of two people who had found each other against all odds. The wedding night, Olivia was nervous despite everything. In her marriage to Marcus, intimacy had been another form of cruelty, something to be endured. Zachary seemed to sense her apprehension. He took his time, patient and gentle, showing her with actions what he had been telling her with words for months. That she was precious, that she was valued, that her comfort and happiness mattered more than anything. When he finally made her his wife in truth, Olivia cried again, but this time from joy at discovering that being loved could feel like this. They settled into life at the ranch, and Olivia discovered she loved it there. She learned to ride, spending hours exploring the desert landscape that had seemed so alien when she first arrived. She helped Zachary with the horses, discovering a natural gift for working with the animals. She planted a garden and made the ranch house into a true home, filling it with warmth and laughter. A year after their wedding, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She told Zachary one evening at dinner, and he dropped his fork, his face cycling through shock, joy, and terror in quick succession. "A baby," he said wonderingly. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Olivia asked, suddenly uncertain. Zachary stood and pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was made of spun glass. Happy does not begin to cover it. Terrified, amazed, grateful, but yes, incredibly happy. He pulled back to look at her face. "Are you happy?" I know after everything you have been through, this might bring up difficult feelings." "I am happy," Olivia said, and realized she meant it completely. "With you, I am not afraid. I know this child will be loved and safe and cared for. I know you will be a wonderful father." "I am going to try," Zachary promised. "I am going to try so hard." Their son was born in the spring of 1885, a healthy baby boy they named Joshua. Zachary was present for the birth, holding Olivia's hand through the long labor, and when the midwife placed their son in his arms, Olivia saw tears streaming down her husband's face. "He is perfect," Zachary whispered. "Olivia, he is perfect." Watching him cradle their infant son with such tenderness, Olivia felt the last shadows of her past life finally lift. This was her family now, built on love and trust and mutual respect. This was home. They had 2 more children over the next 5 years, a daughter they named Sarah, and another son they called William. The ranch prospered, growing into one of the most successful operations in the territory. Zachary took on more hands to help with the work, and Olivia became known throughout the area for her skill with horses. Several people sought her out specifically to help with difficult animals, and she discovered she had a gift for gentling even the wildest creatures. One evening, when Joshua was 7 and running around the yard with his younger siblings, Zachary and Olivia sat on the porch watching their children play. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, and the air was finally cooling after another hot summer day. "You remember the first time I saw you?" Zachary asked, reaching over to take her hand. "I remember," Olivia said. "I was so afraid of you. You were so big and stern-looking, and I had learned to fear men like that. And now," Olivia smiled and squeezed his hand, "now I know that you are the gentlest man I have ever met. Strong, yes, but your strength is in your kindness. You saved me, Zachary. Not just from Marcus, but from a life where I believed I deserved to be hurt. You showed me what love is supposed to be." "You saved me too," Zachary said quietly. "I was just going through the motions before you came, working, surviving, but not really living. You gave me a reason to come home every night. You gave me a family." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "Even if you did look at me like I might be a monster that first day." "I am so glad I was wrong," Olivia said. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the children play and the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. Joshua caught a firefly and showed it to his sister, who clapped her hands in delight. William toddled after them, determined to keep up with his older siblings despite his shorter legs. "There is something I have been wanting to talk to you about," Zachary said. "I have been thinking about expanding the ranch, maybe buying the property to the east. It is good grazing land, and with the children getting older, we will need to think about their futures. I want to build something that will last, that they can inherit." "I think that is a wonderful idea," Olivia said. "This ranch is already amazing, but I know you have dreams of making it even bigger. We can do it together." "Together," Zachary repeated, lifting her hand to kiss her knuckles. "I like the sound of that. Everything is better when we do it together." As the years passed, the ranch did expand. Zachary's hard work and Olivia's skill with horses made them a formidable team, and their reputation spread throughout the territory. They became pillars of the community, hosting barn raisings and holiday celebrations, helping neighbors in need, and raising their children to understand the values of hard work and kindness. Beatrice remained a constant presence in their lives until she passed peacefully in her sleep when Joshua was 10. They buried her in the Chloride cemetery, and Olivia mourned the woman who had given her sanctuary when she needed it most. But she also celebrated her aunt's life, grateful beyond words for the refuge that had allowed her to heal and eventually find love. One warm summer evening, when the children were grown, Olivia and Zachary rode out to a favorite spot on the ranch, a high ridge that overlooked their land. Joshua was now married himself and managing much of the day-to-day operations. Sarah was engaged to a young doctor in town, and William was talking about becoming a lawyer. Their children had grown into good people, kind and strong, and Olivia was proud of each of them. "Look at all this," Zachary said, gesturing to the ranch spread out below them in the fading light. "Remember when it was just me in a 3-room cabin with more dreams than sense?" "You had plenty of sense," Olivia said, leaning against his shoulder. "And you made all those dreams come true." "We made them come true," Zachary corrected. "I could not have done any of this without you. You are my partner in everything, Olivia. The best decision I ever made was deciding to wait for you, to give you time to heal and trust again." Olivia turned to face him, struck by how the years had aged him. His dark hair was now streaked with silver, and lines creased his face, but his eyes were still the same, still looking at her with that gentle intensity that had first convinced her to take a chance on love again. "The best decision I ever made was getting on that stagecoach to Chloride," she said. "I thought I was just running away, but I was actually running toward you, toward this life, toward happiness I did not know was possible." "I love you," Zachary said, as he had said countless times over the years. "I love you more now than I did the day I married you, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." "I love you too," Olivia replied. "Thank you for being patient with me. Thank you for showing me what a real man is, what real love is. Thank you for giving me a life worth living." They sat together on the ridge as the sun set completely and stars began to fill the vast Arizona sky. Below them, lights appeared in the windows of their home, where their children and eventually their grandchildren would continue the legacy they had built together. It was a legacy of hard work and perseverance, yes, but more than that, it was a legacy of love and trust, hard-won but freely given. As they rode back to the ranch house in the gathering darkness, Olivia thought about the woman she had been when she first arrived in Chloride, broken and afraid, hiding bruises on her ribs and in her heart. She thought about how Zachary had seen past her fear to the person she could become with the right support and care. And she thought about how far she had come, from a victim who flinched at shadows to a strong woman who had helped build a thriving ranch and raise 3 confident children. The scars from her first marriage had never completely disappeared. Sometimes a loud noise still made her jump, and occasionally she still had nightmares about Marcus finding her. But those moments were rare now, brief shadows in a life full of light. Zachary had taught her that not all men were cruel, that strength could be used to protect rather than harm. Their children had grown up watching their father treat their mother with respect and tenderness, learning by example what marriage should look like. Years later, when Zachary and Olivia were old and gray, they would sit on that same porch where Marcus had confronted them so long ago and watch their grandchildren play in the yard. The ranch had passed primarily to Joshua, though all 3 children remained involved in its operation. Sarah had married her doctor and they had 4 children of their own. William had indeed become a lawyer and was making a name for himself in Prescott, fighting for justice for those who could not fight for themselves. "We did good," Zachary would say, his voice now roughened with age but still warm when he looked at her. "We did very good," Olivia would agree, taking his weathered hand in hers. On a spring morning in 1910, Zachary Harper passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 53, with Olivia holding his hand. She mourned him deeply, grieving the loss of the man who had saved her in every way a person could be saved. But she did not fall apart. He had given her too much strength for that, had spent too many years building her up and helping her remember who she was beneath the fear. Olivia lived another 15 years, staying active on the ranch and watching her grandchildren grow. She was known throughout the territory as a woman of strength and compassion, someone who had overcome tremendous odds to build a beautiful life. She wrote her story down in the final years of her life, wanting her grandchildren and their children to know where they came from, to understand that love and kindness could heal even the deepest wounds. When she finally passed in 1925 at the age of 65, she was buried next to Zachary on a hill, overlooking the ranch they had built together. Her children and grandchildren gathered to remember a woman who had started with nothing but pain and fear, and had transformed that into a legacy of love. The story of Olivia and Zachary Harper became something of a legend in Chloride and the surrounding areas. People spoke of how a cowboy had seen a woman's pain and chosen to protect her, to love her, to give her time and space to heal. They spoke of how that woman had found the courage to trust again, to build a life with a man who was everything her first husband was not. And they spoke of the family they created together, a family built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine affection. The ranch continued to thrive for generations, each inheritor understanding that it was more than just land and cattle. It was a testament to what two people could build when they chose love over fear, patience over pressure, and kindness over cruelty. The house that Zachary had built with his own hands eventually became a sprawling home filled with the laughter of children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of them learning the lessons that Zachary and Olivia had lived by. In the small cemetery in Chloride, their headstones stood side by side, simple markers that gave only names and dates. But those who knew their story understood that those stones marked something extraordinary. They marked the resting place of two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built something beautiful out of pain and fear, and who had loved each other with a depth and constancy that changed not only their own lives, but the lives of everyone who came after them. The bruises that Marcus had left on Olivia's ribs had faded within weeks of her arrival in Chloride. But the emotional wounds he inflicted took much longer to heal, requiring patience, understanding, and the kind of love that Zachary offered freely and without condition. He had seen her pain that first day when the stagecoach jostled her injured body. He had seen it again weeks later when her dress shifted as she reached for something, and he caught a glimpse of the fading marks along her side. And his jaw had set hard with rage, not at her, but at the man who had dared to hurt someone so clearly good and gentle. That rage had never been directed at Olivia. Instead, Zachary had channeled it into protection, into creating a safe space where she could heal. He had used his strength not to dominate but to defend. He had used his size not to intimidate but to shelter. And in doing so, he had shown Olivia that men could be good, that marriage could be a partnership of equals, and that love did not have to hurt. Their story was not one of perfection. They had arguments and disagreements like any couple. There were times when Olivia's past trauma surfaced unexpectedly, when a gesture or word would trigger old fears. There were times when Zachary's protective instincts went too far, and Olivia had to remind him that she was strong enough to handle things herself. But through it all, they talked, they listened, and they worked together to build a marriage based on trust and communication. The last letter Olivia ever wrote was to her youngest granddaughter, who at 16 was struggling with questions about love and relationships. In it, Olivia shared the wisdom gained from a lifetime of experience. "My dear girl," she wrote in her spidery hand, "I know you are confused about what love should look like. I understand because I was once very confused too. When I was young, I thought love was about sacrifice and endurance. I thought it was my duty to accept whatever treatment my husband gave me, to be grateful for any small kindness. I was so very wrong. Real love, the kind worth having, makes you feel safe. It makes you feel valued. It makes you stronger, not weaker. The man I eventually married, your grandfather Zachary, showed me this truth. He was patient when I needed patience. He was strong when I needed strength. He was gentle always, because true strength is gentle. He never raised his hand to me except in tenderness. He never raised his voice to me except in laughter. He treated me as his equal partner, and together we built something beautiful. Do not settle for less than this. Do not accept anyone who makes you feel small or afraid. Do not believe anyone who tells you that love should hurt. It should not. It should feel like coming home, like safety and warmth and joy. And if it does not feel that way, then it is not real love and you deserve better. I was lucky to escape my first marriage and find my second. Not everyone gets that chance, so choose wisely the first time. Look for kindness in the man you consider. Look for respect. Look for patience. And if you see any sign of cruelty or controlling behavior, run. Run as fast as you can, because those things do not get better, they only get worse. Your grandfather saw me when I was broken and he helped me heal. But he did not fix me. I did that myself with his support. Remember that too. You are not a project to be fixed or a prize to be won. You are a whole person deserving of love that recognizes and honors that wholeness. I am old now, and my time grows short. But I am content because I spent most of my life truly loved and truly loving in return. That is what I wish for you, my dear. Find a love that makes you brave instead of afraid. Find a love that makes you fly instead of keeping you caged. And when you find it, hold on to it with everything you have, because that kind of love is rare and precious and worth more than all the gold in the world. With all my love, your grandmother Olivia. That letter was found among Olivia's things after her death and carefully preserved by the family. It was passed down through generations, read at weddings and shared with young women coming of age. It became part of the Harper family legacy, a reminder of where they came from and what they stood for. The ranch itself changed over the decades, adapting to new technologies and changing times. But the core values that Zachary and Olivia had established remained constant. Every generation understood that they were stewards of something larger than themselves, caretakers of a legacy built on love and maintained through integrity. In time, the town of Chloride itself changed. The mines eventually played out and the population dwindled. But the Harper Ranch remained, a constant presence in the landscape, a reminder of the people who had built it and the values they held dear. And on quiet evenings, when the desert wind whispered through the sage and the stars filled the vast Arizona sky, it seemed like you could almost hear the echo of Olivia's laughter and Zachary's deep voice, still present in the land they had loved so well. Their story was one of transformation and redemption, of pain overcome and love discovered. It was a story that reminded everyone who heard it that no matter how dark the past might be, the future could be bright if you had the courage to reach for it and someone to hold your hand along the way. And it was a story that would be told and retold for generations, inspiring others to believe in the possibility of healing, the power of patience, and the transformative nature of love freely given and gratefully received.